There's a worrying blend, I think, between the idea of masculinity and politics. Um, Throughout my whole life, up to this point and into the future, I've always battled with the idea of what it truly meant to be a man. There's obviously the classic, a man doesn't cry, a man is strong, a man is this and that, all these little adjectives, these two-dimensional adjectives that we attach to the idea of manliness that I've really battled with um, for a while. And you're starting to see that, in politics, the idea of, support this policy because you're a real man. You know, I'm sure you can think of a lot of policies that would relate to that. But, you know, we're told to just be a man, damn it. And I think, you know, to say that there isn't a difference between men and women would be silly. Um, but in my personal opinion, the idea and the definition of masculinity that I've really tried to apply to politics and my political views is one of responsibility. And I say responsibility in the sense that as a man, coming from my background, I would say that taking responsibility and ownership of my actions and those I love um, at this point is what I define as a man, and that could be achieved in multiple different ways, you know. And am I saying that I support a patriarchal nuclear family? I could disagree. Um, I think taking responsibility and power are very different things. Responsibility is standing up for those who you love. Responsibility is taking ownership. Responsibility is, you know, keeping a positive attitude, looking at the path forward. And, I think that really applies to the idea that my political views have now been shaped in the sense where um, the government and these politicians telling me that the odds are stacked against me, that if it weren't for the other side that I would be able to achieve what I wanted to achieve. Maybe it was because of, growing up in middle class. Maybe it was because, you know, capitalist society is too taxing on the middle class. Maybe it's because, I'm a person of color. Maybe it's because my parents are immigrants. All these little things have been told that I had, or maybe it's even racism, all these little things that I've been told over the years have been, used to really mess with my head in the sense where if there's anything, if I ever hit a low, if I ever hit a hard point, it's very easy to use, you know, this safety net, this retreat. Well, it's because it's their fault. It's their fault. You know, President JFK, who hangs in my dorm room, so powerfully said, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. And I think, it's not that idea of you have to serve your country, you have to go in the military, you have to make your government a lot of money. It's the idea that change is up to us, change is up within you. I don't really think, a politician is going to solve all my problems. I really think that, you know, there's a lot of policies that I do disagree with Bernie Sanders about, but I do like what he said that the idea of politics is supposed to be a boring field. It's supposed to be something that not, interrupts your day. It's supposed, you're supposed to be rooting for your sports team, not your politician. But we get so attached to these political figures because, it follows the same rhetoric as our sports teams, it's team red versus team blue. And, you pick a side and hopefully they win. And if they win, you're on top of the world for a few minutes. You get your 15 minutes of just sheer joy, and then everything goes back to normal. And vice versa, if the opposite team wins, life feels like it's upside down. But, after those few moments, everything goes back to normal. So these constant ideas of, and that's not to say things like racism doesn't exist, or toxic masculinity doesn't exist, or the struggles of being an immigrant, or, a person of color, or being in the middle class. That's not to say those issues don't inherently exist, but I think the idea of just sitting and, putting that blame on the issue, blaming these things, especially at the hands of, your politician, right? Just sufficing to what the politician has to say of like, it's this problem, it's that problem, it's because of this, it's because of that. I don't think that ever helps anyone. I think it's good to seek the truth, question all authority, and, find the empirical evidence. But I've found in my personal life it's never been helpful to sit there and blame external things for my failures. Um, but there is a distinction. Like I said, you have to acknowledge it, but you can't sit around and mope about it all day. And I think that's something a lot of people, and I'll go into little anecdotal things that it's very nice to say, I made it out, despite X, despite Y, I grew up in a not so rough environment and I made it out. That perks up an ear. That makes people, wow, oh, you made it from low class to high class, you say. No one's going to perk up their ear when you say, my father owned a big business and I took over and I have a steady flow of income, right? So you only hear and you only like to hear about the things, and that idea of, I wouldn't call it victimhood, but the idea that a lot of people like to ascribe themselves as someone who is not fortunate, who is not privileged, is, more impressive and more, just overall a better person, which I think needs to be addressed in a way. Do I think, white privilege or the idea that some white person is out to get me? I don't think so. And do I discredit, a white man for achieving something greater? Do I discredit that? Not particularly, not at all. But like I said, there's a fine line that we should address. We should be truthful. We should be transparent. But at the same time, sitting around and moping about the issues and blaming external things doesn't really help in that same regard. So there's a very fine line and there's a mean to achieving that. And with that being said, I hope you enjoy your day. Thank you for watching. I will see you all tomorrow.